Hello, my name is Jessica Shelley. I'm the co-founder and head educator at DailiesPods. Today we have Ms.Adrinna, one of our fabulous and fantastic DailiesPods educators with us today to talk about a topic that she's passionate about in the field of education. Thank you for joining us today, Ms.Adrinna. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience, and why you like working at DailiesPods.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be able to share. So my name is Ms.Adrinna, and I have been teaching probably actually since like 2006. I started teaching older kids, and as the years went by, I've done like younger and younger until I've gotten to pre-K with DailiesPods. But it was such a pleasant surprise for me to learn with these wonderful preschoolers, with the pre-K classes. I absolutely adore them. I love being able to go into the living rooms and dining rooms and family rooms of these kids all over the place. And it's been such a pleasure for me to work with DailiesPods. It's such a unique experience because we're able to be all over the place. We're all in different time zones. Some kids are in the afternoon, some of us are in the evening, and yet we can all come together for an hour and learn together. And I get all of these wonderful personalities, and they're just so quirky and so sweet and so creative. I just love being able to work with dailies. It's super fun.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we're so glad to have you on the team. And I love that you bring up the fact, too, that even though we can be all over the country, potentially all over the world, we can still come together for that 1 hour and spend some quality time learning and enjoying life and learning with
Yeah.
our students. So
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Awesome. Well, what topic will we be talking about today?
Well, today it's a topic that is really close to my heart. I absolutely love hands-on learning. And some people call it experiential learning, but hands-on learning for me is very, very, very close to my heart because when I became a teacher, I thought back to my own personal experiences. Like I was the kind of child who loved school anyway. Like I would cry when I couldn't go to school. So I used to always tell my students, I'm still here because I love being here. Like school is wonderful. I love school.
Yeah.
However, when I was in school, whenever we got to do anything that was like, for instance, for science, which was not necessarily my favorite class, but when we got to do inquiry-based learning in science, so you got to actually do an experiment or something, it was so fun and I loved it. So when I became a teacher, I was like, okay, if I were a student, what would I want to do? What would actually be fun for me? And I thought back to my experiences as a student, what would actually be fun? Because I already had the motivation to learn, but many of my friends hated school. So I'm thinking back to those times when they were just like, oh, it's so boring. We have to do this, we have to do that. And I didn't want school to be something that you had to do. I wanted it to be something that you were excited to do. I wanted it to be something that was fun. And so if it was fun and they could learn at the same time and maybe not know they were learning, then that would be amazing. And so when I started to come across, for instance, DI, differentiated instruction, which has a lot of hands-on learning, scientific inquiry, when I did training for that, training in best practices for math, a lot of different things that as teachers, we've had the privilege to be able to maybe go to seminars or do trainings for. And a lot of education in recent years has shifted its focus a little more to experiential learning, where they're not standing in a room and having someone talk at them. They actually get to experience what we want them to learn instead of just like it being maybe for some kids just boring, where they're just like, oh, I just do not care. Instead of that, we say, hey, guess what we're going to do? Let's get out our whatever utensil, or let's get out this map, or let's get out this thing. And we're all going to do it together. So we're actually, I like using that term hands-on because they're literally going to take it in their hands. They're literally going to use something with their body. They're going to use their mouth, or they're going to use their hands or their feet or something. They're going to physically do something, and they're going to do an activity that will help them to learn the concept we want them to learn.
Awesome. Yes, I love this approach. And this is part of like what DailiesPods is, even from the foundation. So I love that you're super passionate about this and we're able to incorporate this into our DailiesPod sessions as well. Can you give me an example maybe of a time that you've used this in your classroom, either with DailiesPods or when you were teaching in a physical classroom setting?
Oh yeah, I can give you examples of both. So for instance,
Sure.
like you are, I can start with traditional classroom setting because that's what most people are used to. If we're going down to the grades that I teach, because I teach pre-K, that pre-K bridge age, 3 and 4 years old. So you can just imagine if you were in a traditional classroom setting that the student, you might want them to learn about the parts of a tree. Okay, so what one could do if you're not doing experiential learning, you could say, these are the parts of a tree. And you pull down maybe, or you show them a poster or a picture and you say, this is the trunk and these are the branches and those are the leaves. That is the opposite of experiential learning. Experiential learning would be, the hands-on would be, all right, guys, take out your sheet of paper, get your finger paints out. We are going to paint a tree. And so then they get their paper out. And as the teacher, my job is just to kind of guide them through it. So I'll say, all right, what color is our tree bark going to be? There's so many colors. We have brown, maybe it's white, maybe it's even kind of a black color. Oh my goodness, maybe it's red. What color is your trunk? The trunk is the bottom part of the tree. Let's draw it so it looks like this. And I might draw mine first, and then they get to take their finger paints to draw. So a lot of times in a classroom, like you can provide them with paints, or you can provide them with something, or maybe it's like blocks where they take their blocks and they do the brown and then they'll do the green, something like that. So in a traditional setting, you can use a lot of materials, like different materials, in order to teach them a concept. And it's something that they're going to build with their hands. So with dailies, what we'll do is we want to do the same thing. But we want to simplify it so that it's accessible to everyone, right? So maybe not everyone has finger paints. Okay, maybe not everyone has blocks. We get that. So I want to make it as simple as possible, but I'll still have them draw this tree in our class. And the wonderful thing is that we use the Zoom platform where I can go and I can use my whiteboard, which I use in every single class. And I'll open up my whiteboard and I'll say, all right, everyone, we need our sheet of paper. Let's get it out. And I'm going to need, you're going to need whatever colors you want to use. And this is how you draw it. All right, here we go. And so then we'll all draw together in the virtual space. So they're still able to do something that's hands-on, but we're all just doing it together virtually. So it's a little bit different because the materials might be different, but the concept is basically the same.
Awesome. Awesome. And that's a great point too, is that, we try to make everything accessible to as many families and students as possible through dailies. So even if they do, have a drawing time with DailiesPods, not to say that they couldn't then go do an activity with finger paints with their parents, or go create a tree out of blocks if they have it. And just providing that prompt or that idea to families and students, even they'll get excited to share the parts of a tree if they can build it out of blocks for their parent. Even if the parent isn't sitting right next to them during the classes. So I love that you kind of gave a lot of ideas about how it can look in a physical classroom setting, but then also how that can translate over to virtual, but then also get back to the physical setting that the child is in. So that sounds great. What benefits does play-based learning play-based learning provide for children?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's so many. There's so many. So I love it because while the kids like don't realize again that they're learning. Number one, it's they're like, oh, this is the fun thing that we get to do in our class, right? Oh, we're having fun, but they don't realize that by virtue of engaging them, they're actually learning. So it's the fun way to learn. So they have the motivation to learn. There was a book that I was reading when I was learning more about DI, and it was talking about the quality world of a child. So in a child's quality world, what is it that motivates them? What is it that they love? And so if you can figure out what their motivations are, then it's very, very easy for them to translate that into learning. And so if you're able to engage them in something that they love, especially since we give them choice, then it's just like it's a way better way for them to learn. They're also able to retain the information, because if you just show them something or just tell them something, like if I sit here and went, all right, guys, so the parts of the tree are the trunk, the branches, and the leaves. and then that's it. They might forget. You know what I'm saying? The retention could be 5%, but if they're taking out the sheet of paper, they're drawing it, and they're like drawing those branches and like making them all crickety. And I'm thinking, okay, guys, now let's think, have you seen a tree before? What color was it? Was it big? So now they're making connections to the real world. And then they're thinking like, yeah, there is a tree in the park I like to play in, and it has huge, what are those things called? Those one things that stick out? I'm like, those are branches. And they're like, yeah, those branches. I'm like, right. So draw the branches. What do they look like? So they're able to retain the information so much more than if you're just talking at them. Another thing is that is the problem solving, and kind of like there's a critical thinking and problem solving piece to this hands-on learning, because now you're actually asking someone to do something. So when you lecture at someone, it doesn't really require anything from them. They literally are just sitting, right? Their mind could be anywhere. They could fall asleep. But when you're doing a hands-on activity with them, it's actually going to require them then to take out that sheet of paper. They're going to need to choose a color. They're going to need to think about it. And maybe they're going to start drawing and then say, well, I'm not really sure how to draw a leaf. Like, how do I draw that? And then I can say to them, well, okay, think about it. What shape? What does it look like? Does it look like a square? And they're like, no, not like a square. Well, does it look like a triangle? They're like, maybe. Or does it look more like a circle? And then they can say, yeah, maybe it looks like a circle. So they don't realize it, but they're actually problem solving. They're actually using critical thinking. And all of that is just by doing a hands-on activity. So there's just so many benefits to, I mean, we're talking about 3 and 4 years old, and it's so amazing that they're doing critical thinking. Like, you wouldn't even think that. I think like a lot of people wouldn't even think that. They're thinking like, oh, problem solving, critical thinking. This is like, middle school. And like, we're like, no. Pre-K students can do this as well. And then I think one of probably the biggest benefits for me as like the teacher, the thing I love to see the most is what they've created. And I love for my students to create something, even if it's something small. I just love to see what they created. I love to see their art. I love to see their creativity come out in whatever it is that they've done. And I always tell them, like, if we're going to draw something, especially if it's something more abstract, like I say, let's draw a birthday party. What does that look like for you? Because my birthday party doesn't look like your birthday party. What does your cake look like? Who's there? So I want to see with them, like I want them to think about it and then create this picture, so there's no wrong way to do it. So I just love to see their creativity come out. I had a class recently where I asked them to do that, because they were drawing their perfect party, And so one said, well, that would of course be my birthday. And I'm like, of course, of course. I get it. And so then I said, well, what does your cake look like? And they were like, probably the best cake is a unicorn cake. And I'm like, oh, a unicorn cake. And I was like, Ms.Adrinna probably would not be able to make a very good unicorn cake, but to actually make one person, I was like, but would you like me to help you draw one? She's like, yeah, help me draw a unicorn cake, because I'm not sure. So we're sitting there trying to I'm like, how would one draw a unicorn cake? So we're sitting there like, we were problem solving together on that one, but just being able to think about like in the real world, she would think of a unicorn cake. But another student did a completely different kind of party. He did like a family reunion, and his grandparents were there because they live in a different country. So it was like the cutest thing. I'm like, who's that? Oh, that's grandpa, and I was just like, oh. So it's like there's just so much creativity. It can open up so many things in their mind and really get them to start to engage, to problem solve. They're like being analytical and all of that at this young age, but they have it in them to do it. And using these types of activities can just kind of help bring it out.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that story is so sweet about the family reunion. Oh my gosh, melts your heart. So sweet. You did mention like picking up on your students' interest or your child's interest to kind of help engage them in that process a little bit too. Do you have any tips for parents on like, if their child doesn't maybe necessarily have like a specific interest that they can identify right away, how could they kind of help figure that out as far as like learning opportunities or materials to use or things like that as they get started at home.
Yeah, I would just say a variety. Variety is going to be
Mhm.
your best friend when you're not sure. So it's just depending on the types of activities that you want to do. If you're thinking about, for instance, if you're thinking about drawing or art, you may not know like, okay, what is it that they like yet? Give
Mhm.
them a variety of things that maybe they can draw. So maybe one day you guys are looking at the garden. Maybe you can just show them like some pictures of a garden. You can show them YouTube has tons of resources that are educational videos. You can just type in like pre-K gardening song or something, and trust me, you'll get tons and tons of videos that'll come up, something that's fun and bright and colorful. And then you can talk about it
Mhm.
like, hey, what was in there? What did you think that was yummy to eat in that garden? And maybe they'll say a tomato, and why don't we draw a tomato? Maybe we don't know. You're not really sure. So if they weren't super
Mhm.
into that, they're like, I don't know. Okay, maybe the next day you could think about zoo animals. Just I mean, it's not like an exact science, but at some
Mhm.
point you're going to be able to hit that thing where something is really going to resonate with them, and they're going to be like, dinosaur. Oh my goodness, I love that. And then sorry parents, then it's going to be dinosaurs for the next like however many months. Everything will be dinosaurs. But
Right. Oh, I love
then
that.
after that, it's just about feeding that with different activities. It's going on and
Mhm.
getting a principle about dinosaurs and just letting them color it. And maybe you're labeling things like, what part is that? What part of the thing is that? Can you tell me what part is that of the animal? It's the same thing we have. What is that? And they're like, oh, it's the head. And you're like, great job. Why don't you color the head?
Mhm.
Maybe it's getting them like, some dinosaur toys, having them name the dinosaurs, doing, playing while learning, actually just giving them space to play and be creative is also super good for them and just makes all these connections in their brains. So giving them,
Mhm.
getting them a dinosaur set and being like, all right, go play, have fun, play with your dinosaurs. Why don't you make up something
Mhm.
and you tell me a story about your dinosaurs later, and then they can come back and talk to you. So just exposing them to a lot of different things and, being patient, and they will find something. Kids just, they're so amazing, and they're the way that they gravitate towards certain things is so interesting. And I also find
Mhm.
sometimes that it will be something that a parent likes too. So
Mhm.
if you as a parent show an interest in something, they might be too. I mean, I've met smaller kids who are super into cars. And I'm like, you're 4. How do you know about cars? And they're just like, oh yeah, that's this kind of car and that kind of car. And I'm like, how do you know? And then I'm like, oh, dad likes cars. Okay, that makes sense. So it really
Aw.
just expose them to as many things as possible. Their little brains are
Mhm.
sponges, and they will they'll show you because they'll be so interested in
Mhm.
it, and they'll just be like, can we look at that again? So that's
Mhm.
what I would say.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up too, like the student interest can be kind of related to the parent interest, and it's all about that experience that combined, like, if my mom or dad is putting in time to teach me about this, like, oh, I'm going to be more, inclined to be engaged in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you kind of pick up on that as well. Um, Also, I guess a question from me as a parent, but then also maybe some commentary too. But I have a child who is 4, and I'm sure that you know him because he's
Yeah.
been in your classes
Yes.
before. um, but he has some like sensory things. And so thinking through like materials at home too, as you kind of branch out, if you're going to be doing finger paints, I know my 4-year-old would probably not want to do finger paints because of the mess or the sensory feeling of paint on his hands. So
Mm.
thinking through too of like, before you would go out and spend a bunch of money on like finger paint or Play-Doh or clay or kinetic sand or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
maybe giving them small doses of opportunities to test out even the materials that you're using in conjunction with these activities that you're doing for play-based learning. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
were going to trample your trample your dinosaur over into kinetic sand, is that something that would be enjoyable for them, or would that maybe turn them off from the activity? And kind of experimenting around with even the materials could be a great way to for parents to kind of learn a little bit more about their kiddos and provide additional opportunities for growth. If you
I
haven't
agree.
tried kinetic sand, that's a great one to give it a whirl.
Mm-hmm. And just talking about the financial side of that, because you do want to be able to expose them to as many like things as possible, right? A great resource that I'm sure parents already know this, but just in case they don't, a great resource is like the $1 stores. because
Yes.
they have little small versions of like a lot of the materials we just talked about. Maybe not necessarily the kinetic sand, but like
Right.
little tiny paint things, and like little things that they can, little tiny things of pens and little things. So if you weren't sure what materials they like to use, you could just go spend like $2 or $3, and then you can kind of expose them to them and see which one they like. And then you're not going to like maybe a bigger store spending like $15,
Right.
$20, $30 on a whole set, where you could give them something small, and that whets their appetite just a little bit.
Yeah. And then bringing in student choice there too, if they're really interested in dinosaurs, I think that they even have like little dinosaur figurines or things that I've seen there for my own children. So thinking about, you can do it on a budget. And I mean, I do, of course, and I recommend that to families too, because you really don't know what kids are going to kind of gravitate towards, and how long. That's always the
Yes.
running thing in my family too, is that it's like, oh, they'll be obsessed with dinosaurs or cars or whatever for so many months, and then it's like, then they shift gears and it's like, we just have all of that other stuff now. What do we do with that?
They're like, I would like birds in my room now, please. And you're like, birds?
Right.
But we thought was all cars. Nope, it's
right. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
So keeping that in mind too for parents, just have some grace with your kids. Like, they're just learning about everything. There's something new will spark their interest just around the corner. And so, it doesn't have to be this overwhelming thing of trying to make everything super planned or, spending a bunch of money on these activities. It's really just about that experience of letting them kind of explore. So,
agreed.
Awesome. Good. Can you, I guess, give me some additional maybe examples of how you might incorporate it in the classroom and then also in the virtual space again? Like, so you gave the example of the tree. So maybe something that
yes,
maybe it isn't as like scientifically based. Like, how would you do this?
So many examples for you.
Awesome, great.
I do it in every class. So for one thing that you can do in the physical and in the virtual space is with music. So in our DailiesPods classes, we have Musical Monday. And so on that day, while we do everything else that we normally would do in a class, one thing that we always do on Mondays is we have a song that we learn. So you might be thinking like, well, okay, a song is already something that's interactive, right? And not necessarily, because you can play a song and the student can just kind of sit there passively listening to it. And that's not really interactive if they're just passively listening to a song. So one thing I try to always do is to engage them in the song by either having hand motions or instructions they have to follow. So even if the song doesn't come with hand motions, like I make up my own hand motions to songs like all the time. And I don't know if they're great or not, but like I'll teach them the hand motions. So I'm like, okay, guys, like we did butterflies. We were doing like animals that like we were doing insects one week. And so I found this great little song all about butterflies. It was like the cutest. It was like, fly, butterfly, fly. And then like the butterfly in flight invites its friends to fly. And it was this whole, it was really cute. And so I was like, okay, so I need hand motions because again, having them sit in front of a screen and passively watch a video, that's not interactive. So I was like, all right, so I need to make up hand motions. So I was like, what does a butterfly look like? I'm like trying to think, what is a butterfly? So I'm like, well, maybe if I put my thumbs together like this and like we do like a really pretty like wavy motion with our hands. I was like, maybe this is a butterfly. So in my mind, that was a butterfly. So I taught them how to connect your thumbs. All right, let's make a butterfly. All right, so let's make our butterfly fly. So then they are connecting to the song and there are hand motions that I'm teaching them, like the butterfly flies and then it go, like the song I think says they go up into the sky. So we make it go up into the sky and then like there's like sunshine or something. So I always make hand motions. Okay. So this is something that like parents can absolutely do. If you have like a song you want to teach them and just make up your own hand motions. Like no one is there to judge you. Okay. Your child will think that this is amazing. Like they're just like, oh, there's hand motions. Hand motions are so fun. And so, and it can be hands, feet, head, whatever, right? So I always either I have hand motions or I have instructions within the song. So songs that all of us know or many people know, like if you're happy and you know it, right? So if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, right? And so like that one, or like, if you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. Oh, I have to say, let me show you my friend. So this is Mr. Kitty. And
Oh.
my students know Mr. Kitty because he comes in at least once a week. But if there are hand motions to be taught, because I'll always go over what the hand motion looks like first. If there are hand motions to be taught, Mr. Kitty helps with them. So if we're doing like, if you're happy, you know it, clap your hands. I'll be like, clap your hands, watch what Mr. Kitty does. And then if you're happy, you know it, stomp your feet. I just put him up on my shoulders and I make him stomp his feet. And I'm like, okay, I want to hear you stomp your feet. Or if you're happy and you know it, say hi, friend. Hi, friend. Like that. Or if we're doing head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And I always laugh because I'm on Mr. Kitty doesn't really have knees, but we'll still try. So,
yeah.
Like head, shoulders, knees, and toes. So I'll make Mr. Kitty is like my friend in class. He always comes in to help with like random, with things where we're touching stuff or we're clapping, because he's more fun to watch than me, I think. So when I'm teaching like Musical Monday, I always have, if it's a song that has hand motions or instructions. And so, like I said, you can make up your own hand motions. It's super easy. Just think about it. But that will get them kind of involved in the song. And if for the ones who don't like to sing, because we all know some kids love to sing, some kids don't. But at least they're concentrating on the instructions in the song and on the content of the song, right? Because they're making the butterfly, or they're touching their head or their shoulders, knees, and toes. So that's like the most important thing for me with that. For Try It Tuesday, we always do art. So we've been talking about drawing, right? But for Try It Tuesday, I don't just give them like a random thing to draw. I'm not like, oh, look, just draw whatever. Like the whole lesson that we've done that day has been with things that had to do with, it's all leading up to drawing our own thing. Okay, so they're going to end up drawing something that's their own creation. And it's just going to be, again, something that can come from inside. So just like we've been talking a lot about like art, different art materials in dailies, we limit it because, again, we want to make it accessible. But if you're at home, they can use anything. I mean, I'm going to tell you, one of my favorite things when I was in a physical classroom was sidewalk chalk. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I love sidewalk chalk. Like I had so much of it, and I would always be in there like, okay, guys, so we are going to be, you get this whole square. This is yours. So use all the colors you want and draw whatever thing you want. It can be this, your favorite this, your whatever. And sidewalk chalk is super fun. And it's like in a pretty easy cleanup too. It's not super pricey. But that's something that you can do to just get them to do something that's like super artistic. And it's really fun to see the results. You know, you never know what they're going to do. So while we can't do sidewalk talk here in our virtual space, we can definitely do that at home. And then on Wednesdays, we do Wacky Wednesday, where we get to play a game. Now, I've had people, when people ask me, people I've just met, you know, ask me like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a teacher. And I'm like, oh, what do you teach? And I'm like, well, right now I love it. I get to teach pre-K. And they're like, oh, what school do you teach at? Like, actually, I teach at this amazing educational organization called DailiesPods, and it's online. And then they go, wait, preschool? Like, preschool online? Like, how do you do that? Like, there's such concern, and people. And I'm like, no, it's totally fine. The kids love it. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So I tell them about it. So there's so many different things that we can do, like for Wacky Wednesday when we get to play a game. There are a lot of games that, of course, you can play in the real world. In the physical world, you know, you've got hide and seek, you've got just every kind of game. But what we'll do is I'll take games from the physical space and put them into the virtual space. Okay. So I don't know about you, but when I was growing up and we used to take longer trips, we would play I Spy in the class.
It's a great one.
When I was growing up, there were no electronic anything. So my mom had to figure out a way, because my dad always drive. My mom had to figure out a way to entertain us for 3-4 hours, whatever, right? 5. And so we'd play I Spy. That was one of the games we'd play. So I took I Spy out of the physical world, because usually you're in a room, right? Or maybe you were in the car and my mom's like, I spy something white with red letters. And we're like, the sign, right? Well, we're not all in the same place. So what I'll do with I Spy is I'll go into a child's space to see what's around them, or I'll use my space to see what's around
Mm-hmm.
me, or I'll show them a picture. I'll just put a picture on the screen and it'll have whatever thing. So if I'm studying, if we're studying like ponds, like animals, like what the animals
Mm-hmm.
are in a pond. So maybe I'll show a picture of a pond and I'll say like, I spy with my little eye something green on a rock. And then they'll be like looking, they're like, oh, a frog, a frog. So they'll see it in that picture. Or if there's something
Mm-hmm.
behind them and I say, I spy with my little eye something red right behind this child. And then everybody's looking, they're like, it's a chair. So while we're all not in the same physical space, virtually, we
Mm-hmm.
can all be super engaged together.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're all together, looking at
Mm-hmm.
this thing, and they love it. And okay, and my favorite part of playing I Spy is when I say, does anybody want to be the caller? So this person who says, I spy with my little eye. And it is the most amazing thing to see a 3-year-old be like, oh, I want to do it. And then they'll do it right. They know the whole phrase. They're like, I spy with my little eye, blah, blah, blah. Like, and they'll say like a simple sentence. And then their
Mm-hmm.
peers will say, oh, it's this, it's that. And it's just, it's like, it's really is just amazing and wonderful to see these
Mm-hmm.
little minds and how they can just be so developed. And I think I just feel like people underestimate this age group so much. Like they don't
Mm-hmm.
realize how amazing they are, how creative they are, like how much
Yes.
they really, really can do. Another
Mm-hmm.
game that I took out of the physical space and put into the virtual space is musical chairs. So most of us
Ooh.
know about musical chairs. But musical chairs, when you play in the physical space, is usually like a competition, right? You're like,
Yes.
if you don't sit down, if you miss a chair, then I'm sorry, but you're out. And that can kind of like, you know, some people cry. Like I've seen, there have been some wounds on the battlefield of musical chairs in the physical space I've seen. But you can play it a little bit differently, especially if you only have like one child to play. And what we do is I'll find music with musical chairs, kind of the game. There are a couple of things that are the goal. One, you want to teach them, like have them listen to music. You want them to like listen to rhythm maybe. But number 2 is following instructions. And so what I'll do is I'll say, okay, you got to, when you hear the music, I want you to get up and walk around the room. And then when you hear the music stops, as quickly as you can, come back and sit down. Okay. Or I'll say, when you hear the music, I want you to dance around and make as much movement as you can. So they're like dancing around, the music stops, and then they have to like sit down as quickly as possible. And so it turns it from kind of competition to more like cooperation. How can you then follow these instructions and go and sit in your chair? And by the end,
Mm-hmm.
they're like all out of breath after 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh.
Like, when I say, okay, go do whatever, and some of them are running around or they're doing whatever, and the music stops, they like run back to their chair. They're like, did I make it? I'm like, you made it. So it's a way to do something again that's it's physical thing, but in that one we're just teaching them to follow instructions and to be patient because the music doesn't always start right away, so you have to wait.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of things with that game, because I was just like, I love musical chairs. How can I bring that into my classroom? And then I was like,
Yeah.
that'll work. So that's a fun one. They like that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's great too that you have, you have this experience in the physical classroom setting and you know what you've enjoyed as a teacher. And then I love how you're so creative. And so many of our teachers with DailiesPods are so creative at bringing that into the virtual space, which makes it so accessible for students that maybe don't have a preschool in their local area or wouldn't normally be able to take advantage of, seeing peers from across the country. So it is really so special that you are able to create that community in your virtual classroom space, where they can be having fun and being silly and comfortable and
Yes.
that little twist on musical chairs. That sounds so fun. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, so I guess, is there anything else that you'd like to share about play-based learning and how parents could maybe implement some of these practices, or where they could go to for resources or anything like that if they're looking to do some of this at home as well?
Yeah, actually, oh my goodness, there was something I did want to share. And that is a really great website. It's called Epic.
Yeah.
And it has tons of books it has tons of books for parents to use. And it actually, some of them, I mean, they go from basically like 0 up into probably like middle school, maybe even like the age grade goes up, the age range goes up at least, I believe, to 10 or 12. But it's a really, really, really great resource, Epic Books. And some of the books that are in Epic are books that you can use to kind of like use some of those, use some of the, getting some of that physical hands-on into your space. And this is just while reading aloud, because reading aloud, while most kids love to be read to, right? Because it's so fun, but you can actually get into the book and have them be physically involved in a book. So I'm actually going to share really, really quick with you a book that's on Epic. All right, so this is my book. It's called Colors All Around by Wiley Blevins, illustrated by Elliot Kreloff, and it's about this little girl named Coco. The cool thing about Epic is that they'll tell you an age range for the book here, and also a level. Sometimes they'll even have a quiz at the end. My students love the quiz at the end.
Like, that's awesome. What a great tool.
No, it is just to like review. But I'm just like, please continue to love quizzes because you're going to be having them forever. But yeah, so with this book, it's really cool because this is one of those interactive books. I'm just going to show you a little bit. So Coco's looking at all these colors, right? She likes colors. So with this book, it wasn't just saying Coco likes color, Coco sees yellow. With this one, I said, I want you, it says tap it. So I told them, I want you to tap the yellow, tap it with your finger. So they actually came in and they tapped it. And I was like, gotta tap harder. What's gonna happen? And we go to the next page and it's raining lemons and bananas. Oh my, okay, well, let's see what happens when we push green. She likes green, push green. So then they're pushing, I'm like, push hard. And they're like pushing. And then I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. It's like, oh my goodness, there's Coco. She's in a field. What's all this stuff? So we have like butterflies and stuff. When Coco sees blue, I say, tip it over. How do you tip something over? And they're like, that, like take your fingers. So they're taking their finger, they're like tipping. I'm like, you got to tip a little more. And then I'm like, oh, you tipped too much. Look what happened. They're like, the ocean. So this is like a super fun book because with this one, the kids are actually involved in doing it. And like, they almost like, they feel like they're doing it. Like they tipped it. Look what happened when you and Coco tipped that book. So it keeps going and it has, it talks about more colors and we're getting into all different kinds of things. And then at the very end, it has all the colors and then we have to clean up, which is a good lesson to learn. Put the colors everywhere. We got to clean up. But yeah, I would just say hands-on learning can definitely be it does not have to be complicated. It can be as easy as, like I said, going online, just looking up a quick worksheet, something for them to color, just something to be, something that you can sing songs with them or like, doing those hand motions with them, reading them a book that's a little more interactive. And the library is an amazing resource as well. I think most libraries are open now. So just going in and taking a look, you can ask your librarian in the youth section and see what kind of books they have that are more interactive. But there's so much. I think the biggest takeaway for parents for this is really just spending some time, because the more that you spend just a little bit of time with them and really focus on that is going to, the benefits are just going to be so amazing. So yeah, just spending that time to just have them color or have them label or have them look at this or have them do that. Just spending that little bit of time will be so beneficial to them.
Yeah. And dailies can also be a great resource for parents as well. I mean, we have educators that are always willing to jump in and give ideas or give in an extension activity as well. Sometimes that's even included in the Glow and Grow reports after each class of like, hey, we learned about this today. This is a great resource to continue learning about whatever we covered in class. So teachers are very mindful of that too. If you, as a parent, are having any trouble kind of getting started, I'm also a great resource. We have so many fabulous educators. But then also we just recently, I'm not sure if teachers know yet, but we've been incorporating learning resources into our parent portal now so that they can actually download printables directly from us, from teacher approved. We have a group of teachers developing that curriculum. Awesome. And they can do super fun activities. I believe our Friday resources are reserved for like that more hands-on approach. So they're creating something, they're exploring something, they're drawing a scavenger hunt, whatever they can find around their house with a specific letter. So things like that can also kind of help facilitate those conversations with children and their families. Um, but yeah, that's everything that we are currently about at Dailies. And I've for the foreseeable future, excuse me, is really just all about that parent and child connection and how we can help facilitate that through our virtual space. So Ms.Adrinna, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today about the hands-on learning and how parents can implement that in their own home setting, and also how we're kind of innovating that hands-on learning approach in the virtual education space. And we do have so many fabulous preschoolers that are so excited to learn in our classes and our creative educators. So families, if you are looking for support for your child, either with the hands-on learning or just learning in general, we are here to help and support. But once again, Ms.Adrinna, thank you so much for your time today. And parents and families, we will see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.